when you walk in your authenticity and you are who you say you are and you are who he says you are, those doors open themselves. Now, I'm learning how to stop trying to pick the lock on doors and just accepting that that wasn't for me in this moment, because just like anything else, everything does spin the block in its own time. And so when that time does come, will you either be ready, or are you going to be bitter that it didn't happen when you wanted it to happen?
Hey, everyone. I'm your host, Kosh. This is the Creative Breakthrough Podcast. This podcast was created to give artists the codes to build audiences, cash flow, and make a living doing what they love, ultimately to eliminate the starving artist. On today's episode, I think this is episode 25, I have Anisa Brenee. Thank you for being here. I didn't give them your title. Do you want to give them your title?
I'm a media personality, event host. I call myself a creator advocate, so we can get into that too, but a woman of many hats, but you can primarily catch me doing the interviews, hosting the events, and all.
I want to get into creator advocate. That's interesting. Okay, so that might answer my first question already. For people who are unfamiliar with you, although you gave us that title, how would you describe yourself in one sentence?
How would I describe myself in one? I'm doing the best I can with what I got.
That's a good answer.
I think that's the best way to put it, especially right now. I can't say my life is in shambles or anything like that. I think I'm just using the tools that I have to unlock different avenues that I didn't think I wanted to explore. I was so accustomed to being in the forefront and being talent and everything, but there's been a real push and a calling, I feel like, on my life to learn the back end and to be a little bit more behind the scenes and to put my peers in position. So I kind of feel like that's where I am right now. And that's why I'm like, let me just use
that's fire. And see what sticks. I mean, that was like a great elaborated answer on one sentence. So thank you. Because now we can talk about so many other things in succession of that. So, okay. So then how would you describe yourself in one word?
Multifaceted.
Great. I would agree. That's why you're here.
Thank you.
And do you think you achieved your first creative breakthrough?
That's a good question. Well, it's interesting. When I think about how long I've been doing this, I feel like I'm coming up on year 9. And it sounds so weird because I feel like I haven't even done, I've done a lot, but not a whole lot. That's how I feel. You ask somebody else, they'd be like, oh, she's been working. Thank you to whoever says that. But in my opinion, year 9 is really mind blowing. So when do I feel like I made my first creative breakthrough? I don't know if I have one moment in particular, but I will say there were those moments where I put certain events or brands to work with on vision boards over the years. And I want to say right around maybe year 3 or 4 was when they really started coming to fruition. And that was really special to me because I didn't think it was possible. When I got my start, I was at West Georgia. And so being that far away from life, what I felt like, and all things entertainment, it just felt like it was never going to take off unless I decided to put gas in my roommate's car or pray to God that my mother got me or my grandmother got me a car. So in all of that, I feel like sacrifice really stepped in, and that allowed me to finally tap into those things that I didn't think were possible, leading to that creative breakthrough. So, I mean, just to give a few people kudos, A3C was a big one coming up. I'll never forget the first time I touched that stage. People were asking, have you done this before?
What year was that?
Never done this before. 2016, maybe? And this was when we were in underground doing the events leading up to the big concert. And I just remember thinking, wow. And I got to give my props to my big sis. Shelly was right there with me. Shelly Nicole, if you're not familiar, get familiar. But she was right there with me, leading me along the way. So it's moments like that when I not only realize that putting in the time, putting in the drive in order to get there, but also relying on my circle, they're there and they've been there and they're still
that's
here.
awesome. So I was going to ask you, what did that look like for you? But you told me. So you're just being a host per usual.
I'm sorry. I really try to turn it off.
No, it's good. No, it's good. It makes my job easy. So, okay. So my next question has to do with that situation more particularly. You mentioned that people said, have you ever done this before? Looking back in retrospect now, what do you think they saw?
I think they saw this girl who was really eager to be on a stage in front of people she didn't know. I grew up in the church. My mom was a minister of music, and so that meant that we had to be involved in every aspect of in every corner of the church. So youth choir, dance practice, step team, all of the things. And I remember growing up thinking, you know, I really want to sing this solo, but I hate the way my voice sounds. And so I'd always be so nervous to get on a mic, let alone to talk. And so it's so interesting how life has become full circle, and I have landed in a position in which I talk for a living. And so to see that transition happen, I think in that moment it had to be, there's a girl who's finally finding her voice. And maybe they didn't didn't know that in the moment, but I know that's what I was thinking, is like, wow, how am I here? I wasn't allowed to listen to hip hop music, if I'm being completely honest. It was gospel, R&B, funk, all of the things. So now I'm in a hip hop space. I'm on a microphone and I'm doing all the things I was afraid to do. So I feel like I just tapped into this fearlessness, and I hope that's what it is,
and
for lack
so
of better words. But I don't know. What do you feel?
I can't answer it really, because that was many years before I was introduced to you. So you had already, I think, become seasoned, even if you don't believe you were seasoned. I think if you do something for 4 years, I mean, at that point, or somewhere around there, 3 to 4 years, you've probably put in enough hours to be seasoned, right? To be reasonably good at something. But yeah, I mean, every time I've seen you do things after that point, it was never like, oh, this doesn't need to be the person on stage hosting. I think you know when it's bad, right? I just think you know when it's bad. Like if the DJ's bad, you're like, this person sucks. Tell them to stop. But if they're good, it's just like, oh yeah, this party is fire.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting that you say this, because it just leads a whole other thought process that I have when it comes to being in this creative space. I feel like we're in such a time where everybody can do everything, and it makes it doesn't make it necessarily hard, but it makes it easier to pick out who really does this and who is able to do this. You know what I mean? And I'm not knocking anybody who's able to do anything. I would love for everybody to try all things. But just because you're able to do it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always do it. You know what I mean?
Or that you should right now. Just because you have an idea right now doesn't mean it has to be done right now.
Thank you. And honestly, spend some time in that craft, because there are people out here who really sit in that. They really want to learn the ins and outs, the time of influencers and creators and all the things, and people getting booked or called on for different opportunities. And it's very instant. Granted, I love to see what we're able to create, and the friends that we're able to call on, but I miss the days when it really felt like music and talent,
it was intentional.
There was an art behind it.
Yeah.
It was intentional.
Well, that's because it had to be.
Yeah.
I think now.
And now we're
so now we're just building like into capitalism. It's really what it is.
Yeah, I feel like when people talk about glass ceilings, I feel like this version of a glass ceiling is now bulletproof. We're all trying to figure out ways to break through whatever the glass is that's being set now within our own circles. It's how do I get to the next level? Is it, do I call on somebody, or is it that I just push myself and try to figure out something new? But see, over here, I believe in letting the Lord speak through me, the universe, whoever you believe in, I believe in letting it speak through me. And
using your intuition, which is big. So I'm glad you brought that up, because the way that I communicate that to other people is, I think intuition is a peaceful knowing, and I think anxiety is a constant questioning. I think that's how you know the difference. And it doesn't mean you like the answer. That's not what I'm saying. Like you can peacefully know that the answer is no, and you might not like no, but you still know, this is a lot of no's, that it's no.
Yeah, I think that is a beautiful way to put that. And I need you to put what you just said about intuition and anxiety on your story later.
I did. I made it a post, but like it was like a year
I think
ago.
The people need that.
Yeah, that's
repost it.
Yeah, we're gonna recycle that content.
That's good. New year,
old me. So we talked about you starting this, and now you're at year 9. So what did you fail at as you built this? And fail is like a general,
I don't
like
know if,
I'm using that to, I'm asking you it in that way to help people understand that it's just another attempt in order to get to where you're trying to get to.
the best way for me to answer that is I don't know if it is, if I look at where I failed per se, but I definitely feel like I haven't been nearly as confident in myself lately as I once was coming straight in. I felt like I had to have a different level of confidence coming in. It was fight or flight. It was either you're going to show up, rise to the occasion, and get it done, or
Right.
or. And so now that we're this far in, it's almost like, well, how do you pivot? And I think that's where I've been very hard on myself. And sometimes I go quiet, which is healthy. I realize now more than ever, I don't necessarily like being on the scene all the time anymore. And to a degree, that has caused a lot of, what's the word? It's just caused a lot of, I will say, anxiety within myself, thinking about, well, if I'm not out and if I'm not present, then that means I'm not getting called on. That means I'm not getting booked. It doesn't mean I'm like laid out across my sofa or I'm in the bed or I'm depressed or anything, but I I need some time to really reevaluate. And I think you and I talked about this. I needed some time to really think about, what does this version of Anisa Breneè look like? Who I was at 20, 21 years old, eager. And this version of me is eager too, but the levels are very different. We're hungry for different things. I feel like now in this stage of my life, I'm more hungry for meaningful conversation. I think, to go back to your original question, if there was a moment of failure, it was just when I started saying yes to things just for the sake of staying relevant. And it was like, oh, well, don't worry about it. I'll just do it just because it's off the strength, or I'll do it because I really rock with you or whatever. And I still do that. But it was more so coming from a place of, I'll do that not only because I rock with you, but because I know I need to keep my face in the rotation. And so I now I don't want to be that person. I don't want to do that. I want to be intentional with the work that I'm doing and hoping that it's really reaching people, because right now there's so much content. We're digesting so much that if I'm going to be in this space, then I'd like to contribute and not just take a
Graduated. You graduated. That's all that it is. You just graduated to another. Yeah.
container.
That's an interesting way to say it. I've never said container. That's an interesting way to say it. I think it's about reinventing yourself.
Well, like new plants.
I think it's like about slightly tweaking, right? Just slightly. It's like, I always think about Titty Boy 2 Chainz. That's what I always think about. It's like the bars were always there. We just needed to rebrand. And then we rebrand, and then it was Weezy out of here. I appreciate your transparency about communicating that, because it's not an easy thing to talk about for a lot of people, but also it's a necessary thing to talk about, because there's a lot of people trying to figure that out. And I think you're closer than you think.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll say about that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And granted, we have talked. So, it's not an easy road at all. And sometimes it does take tough conversations with friends who are able to be where you were and where you are. And so not everybody is as blessed as I am to have that. And so if I didn't tell you before, thank you for even being a listening ear. And to anybody else that's in here that's listening now, it's always going to be this cycle of figuring it out. But I feel like as you go along the process, you learn how to figure it out different ways, which makes it easier for the next time. And just your willingness to want to figure it out. And sometimes you just don't have it, and that's okay. So take the time you need, do the best you can with what you got,
that's really good.
out.
Thank you for sharing that. That goes into my next question, which is, it's really for figuring it out now, based on you saying figuring it out. But the question was, what are 3 strategies that you've used to break through?
Therapy is a big one for me, especially therapy and consistency in therapy. So I have been actively going to therapy, I want to say about 1.5 years now. And it started out weekly, and then we transitioned to bi-weekly. And that has been a super help, because what I didn't want to happen was that I just continued to vent to friends and family members, and those are the people who will tell you what you don't need to hear, but also there's a thin line between not hurting my feelings and telling me what I need to hear. And so I wanted an outside opinion from somebody who knows nothing about me. And being completely honest, if you're not in the therapy
Yeah.
routine, it's like dating. And you got to be in the headspace to do it, because you might not hit the first time. You might not find the right therapist for you. And a lot of people get closed off on the idea of that because I've already disclosed a certain amount of information to one person, which makes them feel like I don't necessarily want to start over again, because it's just like dating. I don't want to tell you my favorite color. I don't want to tell you my birthday. But I wholeheartedly believe if there is a dating process that I'm interested in, it is therapy. And that has been super helpful, not only personally, but professionally. It just keeps me in a headspace of, I can do this. I get it all out. We talk through it. We work through it. Leads me to my
Can I pause
breakthrough. So I'd say that is
Because
one. I think
I want to
two,
speak to something you said there, but I want you to like hold on to the other two so that you don't forget them. So one thing you said was not being afraid to try it more than once. And I think that's really important, not only in what skills you're trying to like create or develop in your life, but also for therapy, right? I think both of those things in that aspect are important. So the reason why I bring that up is because I hear that a lot. I hear that like, yo, I saw this person and they weren't that great, or we didn't connect, and so I never want to do it again. And it's like, that's not how you accomplish anything. So I just want to emphasize that, because I think you saying that needs to be said in order for someone to have that realization to do those things. But continue, the other two.
You're spot on. I mean, you dust yourself off and try again. We'll sing the lyrics all day long, but there's a gap between singing the lyrics and putting it into action. And that's with everything. The second thing is, again, you'll hear me reference my belief a lot, because I've spent a lot more time getting more grounded. But there's a word in the Bible that says, love God, love yourself, then love others. And so in prioritizing self, after I prioritize God, who I believe in, that has been a game changer as well, because we get so accustomed to prioritizing the universe or God or whoever we believe in or whatever, whether it's our kids, our family members, everybody else, and put ourselves last. And being completely honest, I've lost some friends, I've lost some relationships off of choosing myself, because to them it comes off as selfish, but to me it's what I needed to do in order to be better for me. And there's no way I can be a good version of me for you if I'm not good for me. And so in understanding that doesn't make me selfish, it makes me human, that has helped as well. But that also too goes into that push that therapy has given me. It's like, hey, stand in who you are. Stand in who you are at this season of your life, because who you were last year is not the same person you are today, let alone yesterday. And it's never going to be the same. So that is my second thing.
While you ponder on that, I have something to say about what you just said too, because it's so important.
Run it.
Like, I would even make the argument that the people that take that personally were never right for you in the first place. So that doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean that, we should condemn them or whatever the case. It's just people understand things at different times. And you have to move and just not take things personally. And you have to just continue to put your best foot forward in your own life. And the people who are willing to understand that are the people that will stick around.
For sure. And, you can only hope that people one day they'll understand when it is their turn to understand. And that doesn't mean that it's, aha, I told you so, or I knew it was coming for you. But we all have that time. I really do believe that when sometimes it requires, in order for us to go to the next level, we got to be by ourselves. I don't believe stillness is a coincidence. I don't believe that, for example, I went back and forth. I don't know if you've seen it, but your girl just got back from South Africa. It's my first trip over to the motherland. Thank you. And I waffled on my decision to go for a while. I was like, I don't know, this seems very big. It's very daunting. It's something that my mother hasn't even done. It's something my grandparents haven't done. It's Africa, right? And I finally just jumped to do it. Kosh, I kid you not, the best experience of my life. And if I hadn't chosen me in that moment and just said, listen, this is something you've never done before, but it's everything that you deserve. And who you are going is not the same as who you're going to be when you return. That was the scary part. The transformation, the mindset shift, the everything. It's scary, and it's giving me chills right now because I'm still sitting in accepting that 20 days ago I was so nervous about going, and now I have a whole new perspective on the continent, on how I work moving forward, on what I'm working towards and where the roads lead back to. So I think about all of those things and how I make decisions, especially career-wise, moving forward.
That was powerful. I was going to call you Bishop Breneè.
Oh,
because you were talking about Bible thumpers, and then I was thinking about like TD Jakes. I don't know why, but and then you said that, and then that was like a scripture. Like honestly, I feel like that was a bar, right? And I'm really glad that you communicated that, because I had this conversation with a client the other day, and he was talking about how logical he is and how he operates off of probability. And I was like, I understand that as a man, from an analytical perspective, like I get it. But I was like, you can't open yourself up to the miracles of God if you keep your thought process in that structure all the time. And so by you talking about that and saying, you know, I was like, yo, let's run it. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody's ever done this before in my family, but I'm just going to try it. I'm going to take the next step, basically. That's the way I look at it. You take the next step. And I think humans in general, not just creative people, we're all afraid of doing something. But I think if we would just take the next step, then we would recognize that miracles open up for us in our lives. And I've seen this many times in my own life. I see it constantly. Every time I get in a space where I'm questioning my capability or questioning if I have the resources to do the thing that I want to do.
And if I can just piggyback off of that, where that story comes full circle is the mental block that I had was, if I spend this money on this ticket, I know I have money to pay my rent, but am I tapping so much into what I have saved and I have no events for the month of December? What does that look like? I'm so worried about the things that aren't even, like, it was very much God on my calendar saying, no, you're supposed to be here. No, you're supposed to go. Because I can't tell you the last time I've had a full month of nothing, right? And so to sit back and look at it like that, it was almost ordained for me to have this trip, have the funds to do it, be able to pay my rent. Thank you, Lord. Didn't come back to pipes burst in my place. None of that. Everything was protected because I was supposed to go do something that many of the people around me, many of my peers, my family members had never done or seen. So to now be that voice and hope that more people do go visit or go do things that they've never done before, let alone their peers. I hope that you look at what I'm doing right now and you say, you know what, because she did, I can.
Yeah, no, that's great. I want to speak to that point about having an open schedule, right? The way I look at certain things in life, I've started to shift my perspective towards this is opening up space for a greater opportunity, right? If I'm continuing to do the same regimen or routine that I've been doing out of comfort or out of necessity, I may actually be limiting my ability to do something greater because I don't have the time. So it's like for every job you say yes to, it's a job you say no to, just by default. So I'm really glad to hear that you were able to do that. But the thing that takes it a step further is, I think at the age that I'm a little bit older than you. You're how old? Can I ask you that? Is that safe to do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 27. I'm 31. At the around the age that both of us are, a lot of times we tend to be the first people to do the things because of generations, like the access to resources. Like we just talked about resources and then thinking about things in a scarcity mindset versus I do have the resources to do this, so I need to do it now while I can. But there's so many resources available to us that our grandparents never had, that our parents never had, and now we have them. And it's like, so now I'm going to dictate whether or not I do something because of other generations who didn't have what I have. It's asinine. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's things that we tell ourselves because we're scared, and it's normal to be scared.
Yeah, it's that. And then I think we also have this mindset of, well, if I do this and I'm the first to do it, then I have to explain it to somebody who is never going to make sense too. And so to have that internal fight of, let me plan this conversation because I know how my mom is going to react, or I know how my dad is going to react, or friend, whoever, who's just not in the same headspace. And so when I feel like when that conversation creeps in, we no longer want to do the thing because I don't want to have to convince somebody.
Yeah. And it's not about convincing them because it's your life. You have to convince yourself of doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm learning how to be more in that space, if I'm being completely honest. I have to buckle down and remember a lot of the time that the choice I make doesn't necessarily affect them.
Right.
It affects me and what I'm doing right now. And if I say no because of them, they're going to sleep peacefully.
Yeah. And the way I think about that too is when it comes to like your life and your decisions, I think your parents are proud of you as long as you're not addicted to drugs or in jail. I think most of the time you're all right in life, like most people, I would say. Would you agree?
There's I call it a very minimum standard of care when it comes to our parents. They have their absolutely hell no, and then they have their, okay, I can deal, right? And to your point, there's a good bit of people out there who their minimum standard of care is don't do drugs, don't go to jail, know these things, make sure you're safe, whatever. But then there's a large community of people who have a lot more than that. While I was in Africa, I was talking to my friends who are the first Americans in their family. Yeah. Their parents are immigrants. And the standard of care in their home was you have to be excellent at everything that you do, right? And in my home, it wasn't necessarily you have to be excellent at everything. It's you give it your best. This is your best, and that's good enough. And so to hear those different family values, or even now as adults, how that translates into our adulthood, it's like all of that carries over. And now I understand more why some of my peers are the way that they are. We may have similar stories to tell, but how we were raised does end up being very different. And I love that about us because I can learn from you. And there's the tightness of how you were raised, I can learn from that. And then some of the ease that I got, hopefully you're able to.
But I think that goes back to therapy too, right? Because not all of those things are helpful. And we have to learn and unlearn. And I'm not going to sit here and try to call out like what's toxic and what's not. Like, I don't think that's helpful. But it's a matter of like understanding what standard of care my parents gave me is actually beneficial for me moving forward because they can't understand the generation that I'm living in. The same way you talked about immigrant children, right? When I think about people that I grew up with and seeing their upbringing, a lot of times it would be based around their parents were trying to raise them in like you said, a container that was based on the knowledge that they had of their home country, but they now live in America. Does that make sense? So now it's like, how do I navigate this world that's not that home country, but you giving me the tools to navigate that home country, and I have to figure out this one because I live here now. So I just think it's an interesting dynamic. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think you're right, and I think that's important. So let's do like a 360 here. Going to the topic of the conversation, right? The power of like being personable in your event hosting. Talk to me about that. Like, what does that look like for you?
Being personable? Well, so like, working, like I'm working.
So the way that you communicate in event hosting and how you make people feel seen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to me in work mode or me in personality mode, whatever that looks like, especially when I'm on stage, I try to envision my family members in the audience and how I deliver what I'm saying on the microphone. So 9 times out of 10, you probably won't hear me throwing MFers out on the mic unless, it just situation calls for it. I try to keep it a very clean show, clean but fun. I realize now more than ever, especially after making content throughout the pandemic, that there's a corner of the internet that's like the Issa Rae's. A lot of the content that I'm seeing now is is the lifestyle content and making mimosas so you see the hand
Yeah.
pour and it's just this perfect video. Well, I tried to do that here recently and spilled all the champagne on my island. So I feel like I fit into this very specific corner of the girls who are just trying to adapt and be a part of something, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And I want it to be fun, and I want people to feel like they can be human at these shows. And if they do want to have a conversation or they want to know how do I get into it, then they can look at me and be like, wow, she's very normal. Because I am the corniest person I think you will ever meet. I play it cool for the most part, but don't let the energy seep through the cracks, because once you get a taste, for lack of better words, it's crackhead energy.
So it's like a dog with the zoomies? Is that what you're...
I wouldn't say the zoomies. I would just say I'm a fun girl. I'm a fun girl, but to the degree where it's like, you want to have a good time? Let's go have a good time. Let's talk. Let's kick it. Girl time, friend time is very important to me. So I'm a host on the stage, but I'm a host in the house too. So any opportunity to be around my people and to just share what I've learned along the way, I feel like it's so important to just give that away. So in my Anisa Brenee mode, if you got a question, you want to know a little bit more, I'm way willing to tell you whatever you want to know. That's just, I would never want anybody to feel like they're like I'm a gatekeeper, or, you know, it's not easy for them to do this too. I mean, it's not an easy job, but because somebody gave me the answers, that's the least.
Would you consider yourself an entertainer?
Not yet.
Because the way that you describe that makes me think that you are. Like, my parents would call it a show off. They'd be like, you're showing off. And it's like, you're just like doing and saying anything. So it's like, it's just like this natural, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but that's as best as I can explain it.
Yeah, no, I'm not just going to start screaming and hollering at the top of my lungs just to get people's attention. But I do like to find the funny moments. I feel like I used to get cracked on a lot, or for people who don't know what that means, I used to get joked on a lot growing up, that I finally have found my voice and can get my lick back. So I like to find moments where we can have fun and be funny and crack jokes, especially during shows. And it's harmless.
There's an art to it.
And all the crazy.
Yeah, there's an art to it, for sure. Yeah.
There's an art to it. There's an art to it, but I just want people, I want the microphones I touch in the rooms that I touch them in, I want people to feel like they're family. Like, we're all here. We good. We're having a good time. We're vibing. And when you leave here, I want you to leave like you felt
so something. I would say you're a combination of a host, an entertainer, and a bishop.
Thank you. I'll have to, I can't wait to add
if you can put all three of those words together into one. Okay, so speaking of you being on stage and touching mics and being a host, and that's, you know, the point of being here today. How do you make money doing what you love? And I always have to preface it by saying this is a general and a specific question.
How do I make money doing what I love? I think the short answer, and I hate when people answer like this, is just being your authentic self, whatever that is. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't know, you probably heard me say this, but over the years, I built this brand who is Anisa Brenee, and every day I'm figuring out who the hell she is. And so, because she changes so much, we're all changing so much. It's like, will there ever be a definite answer? Who knows? But as for right now, I know that Anisa Brenee is certain. Anisa Brenee is intentional, and that is how I'm making my money, by being intentional and authentically me, which is the goofy girl who could have auditioned and maybe, Lord willing, would have been on Insecure, or maybe even a cast member on Abbott Elementary with the dry sarcasm and a little bit of wit. I find myself pulling on those characters that I watch in shows like that when it comes to creating content. I might not dance like this in public, but y'all are gonna get this wild version of me in these reels and these videos. If it makes you laugh, it makes you smile, I hope you know that whatever content you're creating, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just put that thing out. And that sounds so crazy saying, because I have been imposter syndroming myself to death on how to push content out, and doesn't make sense, and who is this for, and who cares, who's watching. Girl, put it out. I'm talking to you, looking at me. Put it out. Because somebody somewhere is like, dang.
Yeah, I'm trying to be that. And you're like, but who is that? Anyway.
But who is? that. And we're always wondering, who is that? Even in ourselves, we'll wake up, who am I today? What am I feeling? What do I want to wear? Because you're not going to get this green, yellowy color every day. No, you're going to get sweatshirts and sweatpants and Crocs.
I'm going to wear black every time you see me, so just know. Okay, so can we drill down on that a little bit more? Like, I understand that you're still sometimes, everybody loves to be so humble at this part, and they'd be like, I'm still figuring it out. It's like, yes, we know. But also, you've done this, and you've made money from a number of different, like, streams in the space that you're in. So can you elaborate those and what that looks like?
I feel like what I'm about to give you is very cliche as well, but you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how far being a good person to others
networking
will take you. But it's more than just a high and by. With authenticity, yes, but I mean, I feel like I had to stop putting so much emphasis on, oh, I got to get out and network, and more just show up in the best light that I can, because whatever light I exude, other people are going to absorb that. So, yeah, the light that you step into a room with is what people will feel. And so I might not be bubbly at all times, but my hope is that the light that I'm walking in the room with does feel warm, and it makes you feel comfortable enough to reach out and think of me for opportunities. And some of the things I've been afforded the opportunity to work on, for example, with Pandora or with New Georgia Project and all these different avenues, I couldn't have planned those. It's one of those things too. It's like I wasn't looking for it. When you walk in your authenticity and you are who you say you are, and you are who he says you are, those doors open themselves. Now, I'm learning how to stop trying to pick the lock on doors and just accepting that that wasn't for me in this moment. Because just like anything else, everything does spin the block in its own time. And so when that time does come, will you either be ready, or are you going to be bitter that it didn't happen when you wanted it to happen? So that's what I operate in, is being a good person goes a long way. And I'm seeing that in who reaches out, who wants to connect, who wants to do an event together.
With that, give me an idea. I like to get real specific. So give me an idea of what a deal like that looks like. Like, what does a New Georgia Project deal look like? What does a Pandora deal look like?
I'm not going into detail on what that looks like, but I will say that those do rely on relationships and doing the work that you said you're going to do. That's how they recur, is by doing that little extra. Just take it a step further. But when you add your own spice on the end, like, don't just read the rubric and do it. Add your piece. That's why you got the call, because you bring a certain seasoning to the dish. Yeah.
So, okay, can you at least give me the rubric that is asked for typically?
Well, hosting is a little bit different. I wouldn't necessarily quite come with a rubric. However, I do create a rubric for myself when it comes to being on a microphone for an event. Like, I have to set myself to a certain standard of, this is how I want to share the information I've been given. This is the tone I want to share it in. How I decide to craft my posts leading up to the event. How I decide to get on my story and talk about it, or do I want to go live? It's things like that that have helped me a lot. But when it comes to content requests, it's like, hey, we want you to create a reel highlighting these specific things and include our game. Figure that out. How am I supposed to include your game in this video? And most people would just put a screenshot on the green screen behind them and be like, here's what I'd probably do a little bit extra and prop a phone up over here and start playing with my phone case and pretending like I'm on the phone. Just little things like that. Go the extra mile to show you're actually engaging with what they're asking for. And then they'll hit you back with little to no edits because you've exceeded their expectations.
That's great.
Or doing voiceovers. You know, we do this all the time. Voiceovers have become, I feel like, the greatest cheat code, because you might not be comfortable talking on camera, but you can take after take and talk through what you want people to know. And story times are huge right now. So if you're into content and you like storytelling and telling people what you got going on with your life, you better get to this one time at band camp.
Right. So Bishop Breneè, I'm here today at the church. Come with me through the service. Join me at service at church. Okay. Right. Like that. I understand. That's good. No, that's helpful. Thank you.
You are wild.
I wasn't saying like, tell me how much they're paying you. That wasn't what I was saying. Like, what does it look like? That's what I was saying.
Yeah. It looks different every single time. I don't know if I've had two of the same anything. I feel like they get more challenging as these creators find new ways to put content out there. You're making it very hard for the regular girls and guys out here.
Because you've done this for a long time, how long would you say you've been doing partnerships with people?
So the pandemic really shifted how, I will just say, for the first time ever, I really saw where money was allocated with a lot of companies. And so when we're all at home, it's like, while we don't have in-person events, money is still going to digital events. And so I can still host a digital event from the comfort of my home because all the things are here and everybody is still here. Or it's creating content, or it's doing unboxing videos for whoever is now putting their money into sending these elaborate boxes with speakers and headphones and coffee and all of the things. So now they're looking for content, right? So how can I add my razzmatazz yet again to somebody who would just be prop this phone up, open this box, look what I got. Once I understood that this is where the future of life is going, now that we've understood how we can do life from home, I feel like that's what really helped me crack the code with connecting with different brand partnerships. Was, okay, well, even if I'm at home, now that I can go back outside, I feel like showing you what I could do at home only allows me to go up, because now I can go outside and now I can do this in other places and I can bring my friends into it. And so now I'm adding a higher value to the content I produce.
I'm trying to like pull all the like little lines of the agreements out. I'm trying to get all the information, but it's not happening today.
But you know what's good? I feel like conversations like this give hope to people out there that it's really not hard. I feel like where we are now is it's not a difficult code to crack. And again, it just goes back to making sure you have a solid group of people around you, a solid team around you, if you do want to go the route of having a team, and not using your people, but allowing people to use their gifts, the best of their ability, in order to help you shine, or in order to help each other shine. So like I mentioned earlier, and I know we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but being a creator advocate,
talk about it.
I've been trying to figure out what this version of Anisa Brenee looks like. And that has been very sobering, because I love being talent and I love being on stage and I love radio and all of the things. But for some reason this year, especially in the last half, I've just kept hearing the word position in my head, and it didn't feel like position for me. It felt like position for others. And so being that I have manifested all these different parts of my life and I like to use One Music Fest as just an example, because I started as a brand ambassador many years ago. So promoting the event, to then, what was it, last year I hosted a stage at One Music Fest, and then this year I got to lead the influencer program. So to see myself have these come ups in these avenues, and honestly taking a back seat this year and not necessarily being an influencer, but being the one that did the behind the scenes stuff in order to get us to the event, was huge for me, because now I'm learning other things and it's allowing me to grow, so that when I do have another opportunity, or for example, if I host something and there are other hosts involved, not only can you hire me as the host, but you can hire me as the host point of contact,
producer, because
now I can create
putting other people in positions.
Exactly. But then also understanding the lingo of a creator or a host, and knowing what a host needs day of, like writer aside. These are just must-have items. Or even as an influencer, and Black influencers, where we're getting so many of our ideas, I will advocate down for us to get what we deserve, because I know what these companies have to offer. And so if I have a friend who's an influencer who's trying to figure out what content looks like and, you know, how much they should get paid, listen, friend, and this is y'all's free little bit of information. Don't worry so much about your follower count and worry more about what your engagement is doing. Yeah. And you know this, Kosh. It's no secret, but people will look at the K and the number next to the K and disregard the engagement. And that makes me sick.
Really glad you brought that up because we have a similar mission. Anisa, how can people find you outside of Instagram, or should they look for you somewhere outside of Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on all these social media platforms, but Anisa Brenee is the handle, Anisa Brenee. You can find me literally everywhere. Shoot me a DM. I try to check as much as possible. You know, I'm walking in a new light now, so I'm just letting the goodness flow through me. I'm excited about what's to come. I appreciate you for having me on. I feel like 2023 is a year of creative breakthroughs.
I agree.
All around, intentional creative breakthroughs. I'm excited to see where the podcast goes.
I think you should do a podcast. That's just, you don't have to, but I just think like it kind of is like a natural progression of what you already do. So
everybody says this, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly it would encompass, but I just don't want to do all serious talk because I'm
so be goofy. Ponder on the thought of a podcast and let God tell you what it should be about. So thank you for your time.
Understood. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you and happy holidays.
Be safe. Peace.